Man, I was dreading this. Despicable Me is becoming the next Shrek series. In Despicable Me 3, Steve Carell returns as the supervillain turned crime fighter Gru, who this time around is let go from the Anti-Villain League for failing on numerous occasions to stop the notorious moonwalking villain Balthazar Bratt, voiced by Trey Parker. As Gru and his wife Lucy try to look for new jobs, Gru is suddenly given the news that he has a long-lost twin by the name of Drew, who, you guessed it, is also voiced by Steve Carell. Drew has admired Gru's accomplishments from when he was a villain, and while Gru is reluctant to go back to his evil ways, Drew wants himself and his brother to be a plundering duo. And by the looks of this guy, I think the only evil scheme he managed to carry out on his own was stealing Donald Trump's wig. Now, I still really enjoy the first two movies. I've watched them over and over, and there are still moments in both that never cease to have me cracking up. And I just love Steve Carell's speech patterns. His voice performance is just as great in this movie. In fact, he must have been having twice the fun this time to be doing a second character with the same accent and higher voice. The movie does a few other things, such as the animation and the 3D aspects just as well as its predecessors, but unfortunately does nothing better. Despicable Me 3 is oddly bereft of the heart and humor that made movies 1 and 2 so memorable. It has its chuckles here and there, but nothing that had my guts busting. Even my younger sister, who I distinctly remember laughing and applauding at the jokes in the second movie, only seldom laughed at this one. Now, I was not a fan of the Minions spin-off from 2015. Although I love those little yellow dudes, an entire movie dedicated to their antics got old fairly quickly. So with the Minions going back to their rightful place as side characters, I was expecting to at least like the sequel more than the Minions movie, but I ended up liking it about as much. In this movie, the Minions have left Gru because they want to work for a criminal mastermind again, so every once in a while the movie will cut to them just doing their own thing, so it's just filler. The same could be said about their scenes in the first two movies, but at least their antics were loosely connected to Gru's storyline in some way. Speaking of Gru's storyline, he doesn't have much of one. No one really has an arc in this movie. The only conflict between characters comes at the beginning of the third act, when Gru and Drew blame each other for something and they part ways, just so that literally 30 seconds later, that conflict can be resolved in the simplest way. Why is it that every animated movie nowadays has to have a scene like this shoehorned in? They can just bypass that scene, and the movie would be a minute shorter and minus a cliché or two. The strangest thing is that despite the fact that Gru doesn't have an arc like he did in the first two, he does have a clear objective, to retrieve this diamond stolen by Balthazar to impress the AVL and get his job back. Spoiler alert, feel free to mute the volume until the warning disappears. When he does steal back the diamond in the end, we don't know if he achieved his goal because it's never established that he got rehired. We just see Drew fly away with his pointy metal ship thing, probably to wreak havoc, obviously building up the inevitable fourth movie. Another small element that seems to be used as an excuse for another sequel is that in this movie, it's merely glanced over that Dr. Nefario, a prominent character from the first two, accidentally froze himself in carbonite. It's just a small detail that's mentioned once and never brought up again, so by the end of the movie, he's still frozen for all we know. In the end, most kids may enjoy this movie. I overheard a few talking about how good it was as I exited the theater. But I feel like at this point, all the sequels and spin-offs after the second movie only exist to take advantage of how marketable the franchise is. Therefore, I can't say I'm looking forward to Despicable Me 4. I'm going to give this movie a 49%. When all the movies are ranked, this one sits at the bottom. Hilarious. That's a wrap. Thank you for watching. I hope you found this review helpful. Like if you liked, subscribe for more. This is Pop Culture. I'm Alex Pop.